Buckle up because we have Neha Patel coming up on the stage next. Neha is a freelance composer and a sound designer, but more importantly, she is a self proclaimed crash team racing child prodigy. So, can we please see those race cars in chat? Welcome, Neha.
Hi, my name is Neha, and I will be presenting Maximizing Your OST Revenue, Composers and Leads, this is for you. So hi, as I said, my name is Neha. I am a freelance composer and sound designer based in Quebec City. I'm currently working on Venba, where I'm doing the sound design, Mini Maker, which is a figure building sandbox game that was released just back in June, Lost Your Marbles, which is a super cute game for the playdate, and finally, Eternites, which is a Persona-style hack and slash game that was showcased at the last PlayStation State of Play. You can also follow me on Twitter at Nehapolitan. So let's get started. Why am I talking about maximizing OST revenue? Well, oftentimes I felt that releasing an OST is an afterthought for many studios, and I get it. Releasing a game is hard enough, but OSTs can bring so much and more than just a passive income. They could be a marketing device. They offer both visibility and a sense of addition to the game. Steam has a tag for soundtrack. That tells me that there's a consumer base and the demand is there. And that is why I want to talk about optimizing our OST revenue, which in turn will help give you peak visibility. So a quick overview of what we will be covering. First, some common mistakes, followed by collecting passive revenue. Third point, marketing prior to release. And finally, Steamworks and Steam OST sales. So first, the common mistakes. Number one, this is the biggest sin, not having an OST released. Number two, lack of planning. And number three, not being on enough platforms. Now let's dive into them. By not having your OST up there on the internet, it makes your music completely inaccessible. And we've seen this with older soundtracks, well, where people will upload them somehow. It's piracy, but it's fine because people want it. I mean, it's not fine to pirate, but the point here is that people have a very strong sense of nostalgia with music. And I mean, just check YouTube. There's so many older games and older soundtracks that are there uploaded illegally, but people crave it. So by not having your music up officially, you're giving room to more of these illegal uploads, and you're missing out on a bunch of money. Something close to not releasing the OST, it's not the same thing, but it's having your OST up late. Late is better than never. But when you upload your OST late, you just miss the big peak, the big visibility time. So it's very important, in my opinion, that the OST is released at the same time as the game. Next up, planning. I will be getting into the nitty-gritty of this a little bit later, but OSTs take a time to upload, usually between 2 to 4 weeks with streaming services. Therefore, it's really important that you plan it properly to coincide it with the game's release, so as to gain peak visibility. Next up, your soundtrack should be available on multiple platforms, different streaming services, Bandcamp, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. And from personal experiences, I've been seeking certain soundtracks, and sometimes it makes me so sad when it's only on SoundCloud. And it's like, hey, I would like to buy your game. Your OST for the game you worked on. Or it's only on a certain streaming service that I'm not subscribed to. Now, let's see, I understand not wanting to put it on Spotify. It is ethically very ambiguous, and the streaming profits are very minimal. But my point here is that having it on different platforms makes it more visible. It gives access to more people, and there's more revenue opportunity. So to summarize, release your music on time. That means on the same day as the game's release. Plan ahead so that you have time to release it on time and that everything works out. and make your music available on multiple platforms. Next, we will be talking about collecting passive revenue. We'll talk about performance rights organizations, using distribution services efficiently, and music publishing administration companies. Each of these points could be a talk of their own. They are big subjects. So we will be covering the basics and the very most important must-dos. So performing rights organizations, also known as PRO. They are organizations that collect public performance royalties. That means music from concerts, TV, radios. It's also where you submit your work, and it's like the proof that you are the writer of this piece at this time. Usually, pros are completely free to join and be a member of, and to register your music. I'm from Canada, so I have joined SoundCan. It's the biggest one here. And not only is it free, but there are many perks to it. I'm saying like travel grants, workshops, there's a lot of stuff to do by being a member. And again, doing so is completely free, and it gives you this foolproof proof that you actually wrote this piece. I would say that once you've written your soundtrack, the first thing you do is to register it with a pro. Now, every country has their own pro, so I would suggest doing your own research to see what's available in your country and what fits your needs. Next up, distribution services. So now that you've finished your soundtrack, you registered it with a pro, the next step would be to submit it to music distribution services. It's these companies that submit the OST to various streaming platforms, because you can't actually just go on Spotify and go like, I'm going to submit my music. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to go through these companies. And there's a bunch of them: SoundDrop, DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby. Which one is best? I can't say. They all have their pros and cons. So it's worth doing your own research to figure out what works best for your needs. A very important note is that it takes time for these distribution services to actually upload the music. We're saying usually between 2 to 4 weeks. So if you submit it today, it will not be live on Spotify by tomorrow. Expect a major delay of, to be safe, a month. Next up, music publishing administration companies, a mouthful. It is a complex concept, but basically registering with the pro is great, but not enough. The music industry is very complex, and there are numerous types of royalties. As indie composers, we usually self-publish our music. We're not with major labels or anything. That means that there's different types of royalties, one of them being publishing royalties, and it's important to collect those. Globally, your pro usually cannot be collecting all of them. When you do not collect these royalties, for one, you're missing out on money that's sitting there, perhaps. Depends on how many streams and popularity your soundtrack has. But when these royalties are just sitting there, they go in this so-called black box, and the royalties sit there for about 2 to 3 years, it depends. And afterwards, the money gets redistributed to all the major publishers, meaning the industry's top earners like Drake and Taylor Swift are maybe getting your $50. It's up to you to find which administration companies is best. There are numerous of them. So it is, again, worth doing your research to see what fits your needs and when to register and when to collect these royalties. But my point here is that publishing royalties are a thing, and don't forget to collect them. This is I'm sorry about the quality of the image, but it's a little chart of how this works. In our case, composition and master, it's not two different branches. In the music industry, yes, but as indie composers, we have all of these roles. And what publishing and the companies do is that they collect the publishing shares right over here. So in summary, registering music. Register it with the pro of your country. That is your very first step. Second step, plan your release ahead. As you saw, distribution companies take a while to send the music to streaming services. So take that into consideration so that you time it with the game's release. Finally, collect all of your royalties. Next up, this is a big subject. We will be talking about pre-release marketing. That means playlist pitching, the delays, and I will also be showing a time chart. Now, something about playlist pitching is that it's not every streaming service that allows you to do so. In this talk, I will be using Spotify as an example because I believe it's one of the trickiest. To pitch on a playlist in Spotify, it has to be done with unreleased music. That means that if it's music that you have already broadcasted to the general public, you cannot use it as a playlist pitch. Also, important note, Spotify requires a minimum of 7 days for the music to be reviewed by the curators. That is the very minimum, and I would recommend up to 2 weeks, if not more. So let's look at this little chart to give you an example of the timing of everything. Let's say your game is releasing on November 15th. Yay, congrats, you did it. You might think, hey, I'll just send my music to the distribution services on November 15th, somewhere around here, so that it's live on time. That's not exactly right. If you want to pitch to playlists, you would have to do so by November 1st to give 2 weeks to the curators on Spotify to review that music. Playlists are important because it's kind of like on Steam, the recommended page or the top this, top that. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be admitted to the playlist, and it's not a guarantee that even if you are on the playlist, that your music is going to do really well. But it is something that you can do in this big pool of music. So going back to the chart, you need to give the curators at least 2 weeks to review the music. That means that the music has to be on the back end of Spotify by November 1st. That doesn't mean that the music is released by November 1st. It's just that it's in the back end. With the distribution services, you can always pick the date of release, and that would still be November 15th. So if you want the music to be there by November 1st, you actually have to send it to the distribution services by October 1st to make sure that a 2 to 4 week delay is respected. Then that means that the soundtrack actually has to be done by end of September. By October, you send it to the distribution services. By November 1st at the latest, it is there. If it's there earlier, even better. Now you're giving even more time for the curators to look at your music. And so by November 1st, it's there. And by November 15th, it's ready, it's released, it's live. This is just a text version of the chart, but basically, yeah, your OST should be complete by the end of September for peak pre-release marketing. When I was talking about the backend of Spotify, this is what I mean. This is the Spotify artist page. And once you send it to the distribution companies, 2 to 4 weeks later, it will show up in this tab over here, the upcoming tab. And there's options to pitch it to the playlist, and then that's what you do. So to summarize, register your music with a pro, register it everywhere. Plan your release ahead, because as you saw, it takes almost a month and a half to be able to pitch and distribute and everything on time before the game's release. And finally, collect all of your royalties. Next up, this is probably my favorite topic of this talk. We are going to be talking about Steam OST sales. This is a very big topic, and it has a lot to do on the topic of whether a composer should keep their rights to their OST. I am a big advocate of it, especially for Steam OSTs. So that means a soundtrack that you sell on Steam. Oftentimes I've heard teams say that, hey, sure, you could keep the rights to the music, like everything on Spotify, on streaming services, and Bandcamp, YouTube, it's all yours. But we can't give you the rights to the Steam OST because it's too complicated. There's too much admin work. It's very complex. I'm here to say that it's actually not that difficult at all. If you are doing the revenue for your game, it is the exact same calculation for the game's OST. It is the same basic math. And I will be explaining why. So Steamworks is an interface where you can see the financial information of the game within Steam. And within Steam's ecosystem, OSTs are considered as DLCs. This means that they have their own unique SKU. An SKU is basically like the barcode, like when you buy something, the little identification number thing. So it's basically that. So they all have their own unique SKUs, and so do the games. So when you're calculating how many games have been sold, it's the same thing for the OST. So let's just go with an example. Let's say that your soundtrack is $10 and that there was a sale from October 1st to November 1st of 50%. Great. You just sold 10 units of the OST at $5. That means you made $50. Great, good job. But let's not forget that Steam takes a 30% cut, even on DLCs. That means your $50 has now become into $35. Little note here, there may be additional cuts with publishers, so I'm take that into consideration as well. But you see this little equation that we're doing. This is for the OST, but it's the same thing for a game. Let's say you sold 10 units of a game. This is the same calculation you do to count that. So to summarize, the units sold is very clear. They have their own SKUs. Are you doing the revenue for the game you just made? Yeah? Well, then you could do it for the OST too. Little note, typically you don't get access to Steamworks, and that's absolutely normal. Practice in good faith. Practically speaking, as long as they have access to the units and the dates where it was sold, the calculation is not hard at all. So a couple of takeaways. First, release your OST with the game. Collect all your royalties. Pitch your music to the various platforms, and Steam OSTs are not difficult to count. My personal thoughts is that I would actually tell you to let your composer do all the work in terms of distributing and pitching and this and that. And I also believe that a composer should keep the rights of the music simply with the amount of work they're doing on the back end. I haven't even mentioned the amount of metadata that's involved and the planning and this and that. Releasing an OST is no joke. Proper planning can help both the game and the music. Collaborate with us. OST should be more than just an afterthought. Maximize your OST revenue for more than just OST sales. And that's it. That's the end of my talk. My name is Neha. You can follow me on Twitter at Nehapolitan. Please send me your questions. And thank you so much for coming to this talk.
Thank you so much, Neha, for that talk. As a brief reminder, if you haven't already, please follow us on our social media. We've got Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and our handle is gdocExpo. Give us a shout, share your favorite quotes, spread the love.